Thank you. And clearly, as the gentleman knows, it's the Senate's job to try the House's case. If the House failed to make its case, that's the House's fault. To suggest that the Senate needs to mop up the mess that was done here because there was not fairness, because both sides didn't get the opportunity. If one side just wants to say, hey, I've got a case to make, I'm going to go make my case, but I'm not going to let them make theirs. I'm not going to let them call their witnesses. And we had a long list of witnesses we wanted to call that we were denied. And you're in the majority, you get to make the rules, and okay, if that's what you want to call fair, you can, but it's not. And so the Senate has it, but it was all done, according to the majority, out of urgency. That's the word we heard over and over again. If the gentleman wanted to have other people come and testify, the president and every president's exerted executive privilege. And so if the standard is a president exerting executive privilege equates to obstruction of Congress, then you'd have to retroactively go back and impeach every president, including George Washington. Exerting executive privilege is not an obstruction of Congress. Congress can have a disagreement with the president. We've surely had disagreements with previous presidents exerting executive privilege when we were in the majority. Guess what? You fight those out in the courts. The gentleman's well aware of that. And maybe the courts will say yes, maybe the courts will say no, but that attempt wasn't made. Why? Because according to your own leaders, Speaker Pelosi, urgent. Chairman Schiff, the timing is driven by the urgency. Chairman Nadler, the threat is urgent. And so they rammed through, and other facts, other witnesses that they didn't want, they discarded. Actual rule of the House, Clause 2J1 of Rule 11 requires, not allows, but requires the minority to have a day of hearing. That was denied because there was urgency. They didn't want all the facts to get out. They were concerned about urgency. And then lo and behold, it passes, and all of a sudden, what happened to the urgency? The Speaker says, whoa, we're going to hold the papers. You had Democrat senators. I think it's time to send the impeachment to the Senate. Let Mitch McConnell be responsible for the fairness of the trial. He ultimately is. Other senators said very similar things, but at some point in time, if it was urgent and then it happened, and then you don't send it over because now all of a sudden you realize there's a weak case and you're hoping something else pops up. You're hoping maybe the Senate can do the things that weren't done here because it wasn't urgency. It was expediency, appeasing a political base. There was no crime. Every other impeachment started with a crime, not the hope of a crime. You can listen to a phone call and suggest something. Interestingly, I never saw any attempt to impeach President Obama because he didn't give that aid to Ukraine. If the aid was so important that it was impeachable not to give it, Obama didn't give it. We didn't try to impeach him. It was bad foreign policy that he didn't provide Javelin missiles to Ukraine. It wasn't impeachable. But President Trump did give the aid. President Trump did sell the Javelin missiles to help Ukraine stand up to Putin. President Obama didn't help Ukraine stand up to Putin, if that's who you're most concerned about.